Science of Joy podcast. This podcast is all about inspiring people to live more joyfully. So if you're seeking a bit more joy in your own life or seeking to bring some more joy to the lives of others, then this podcast could well be for you. I'm Andrew Cannon, and I have the honor to be your host. And in this episode, I'm excited to be talking with Tanya Pinto about the joy superpower of volunteering. Tanya is a strategic marketer with international experience and a proven track record of uncovering powerful consumer insights. Tanya joined Microsoft in 2017 and is currently a principal product UX researcher in Microsoft's Experience Plus Devices team, managing voice of the customer research for Copilot AI. Prior to Microsoft, Tanya started her career in brand management with the Richards Group advertising agency, after which she started her own consulting practice, Shakti Consulting, doing branding and marketing strategy for large nonprofits in the humanitarian sector, as well as tech brands. Tanya also founded Baal Dan Charities in 2005 with a mission of supporting impoverished children, mostly orphans, in developing countries, orphanage, and feeding over 1,000 children daily. Tanya has spoken at TedX at Harvard University's WECAN conference, where she received a Woman of the Year award and is also the youngest recipient of Curtin University, Australia's John Curtin Award for Humanitarian Leadership. Welcome to the show, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Lovely to be here.
Great. So we're going to talk about volunteering, and I'd like to start with a personal note and really have you tell me and the listeners a bit about your own life and how joy has or has not been a part of your life journey so far.
Yeah, so I sort of consider myself a global citizen. I grew up all over the world. I'm Indian. I was born in India, but then grew up in Dubai in the Middle East, and then moved to Australia at the age of 13, then moved to America at the age of 21. And throughout my career have traveled widely, both for business, for work, for personal growth and experiences, and really have had a love of travel ever since I was a child. My father was in the travel industry. He really believed in showing my siblings and I the world. And I think that was a very early experience of joy, really joy through travel and experiencing different cultures, and also moving around a lot. So I think that's something that's really informed my value system and how I think about the world. Really think about all of us as really the same as one. And we have far more in common than we do in terms of differences. And it's also joyful for me to learn about different cultures and experiences too.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? When I think, very much the world, especially the media, tends to try and push us with our differences, right? They try and sell to our differences and to the extremes. I think when you travel, you do notice that people are more similar than different.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, there's a lot of research out there, including our own research, into the power of joy and how of being of service and having a positive impact on others is not only a benefit to those people you're helping, but it's highly beneficial also to the person giving the service. And I remember talking to somebody called Richard Louis early on in this podcast, who wrote a book on selflessness. And his famous quote was that being selfless is the most selfish thing you can do, because of the huge benefits it gives to you, both in terms of life expectancy, your relationships, your career. So there's a lot of huge benefits to being selfless and having this ability to give your time and resources to other people. Do you notice that in your own life? Do you reflect on that at all?
Yeah, I mean, I love that quote. And one thing I should say is that, I started my career in advertising. I was in the US. I worked on very big brands like Nokia and Travelocity. I got to travel again all over the world with my advertising job. And I reached a point in my mid-20s where I was like, you know what, I think there's more to life than this. And I wanted to take a break from working, and I took a sabbatical. And I decided very intentionally to use that 3-month sabbatical from my job in advertising to go volunteer. So I was an Indian girl that had actually never lived in India. I wanted to learn more about my country of birth. I wanted to volunteer specifically at an orphanage. My own grandfather had been an orphan. He died before I was born, but I had grown up hearing stories about him from my mom. And he ended up, becoming a documentary filmmaker. He actually won a Filmfare Award, which is sort of the Indian equivalent of an Oscar for one of his documentary films. And just having heard stories about him, I knew that I myself wanted to just go do something in honor of him, in honor of helping children in need. And so I went to India very intentionally to volunteer for 3 months at Mother Teresa's orphanage and home for the dying in Calcutta. I walked into the experience not necessarily thinking it would bring me joy. I don't know if I even had that as a goal. I went in as a learning experience, as something to do of service. The outcome of it was joy. And it totally changed my life. I went through a lot, it's a lot to go from a very comfortable lifestyle working in a very glitzy ad agency in Dallas, Texas, to suddenly find yourself in Calcutta standing in the middle of an orphanage where the kids wear nappies. They don't even have diapers, right? Like cloth nappies, no washing machines, and just be thrown into a place where you are really rolling up your sleeves and doing quite manual work, but also the emotional and spiritual work. And and it was just amazing. And I discovered something new about myself every day. I think I got far more help for my soul from the experience of being with the children in the orphanage and being at the home for the dying than I think I ever gave to those little human beings or those human beings. I felt like I gained more from that whole experience, and it completely changed my life.
Yeah, I'm sure they gained too from it. But it is amazing that you realize that experience, even not going into it with that intention, but the realization afterwards of how much doing that actually gave you. So congratulations for that. And I presume that was then very much your inspiration to go on to form the charity Baal Dan, which, could you kindly tell us all about that charity and what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So at the orphanage every day when I'd be volunteering with the kids, there was this quote on the wall from Mother Teresa that said, if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one. And, working in that type of environment, seeing the poverty and the extremes of wealth contrasting with poverty really affected me. And it was quite overwhelming. And yet, when I focused on what Mother Teresa said, which is if you can't feed 100 people, then feed just one, I thought when I got back to Dallas, you know what? I can feed one child. I can put one child in school. Let me just start there. A friend of mine had given me $50. It was kind of the catalyst that started everything for me to try to help these kids in the orphanage, and then branch out from the orphanage and help kids on the streets there, then find different orphanages, different, programs helping children. And I really did start with helping one child. I registered the charity Baal Dan in the US, which means Baal means child and Dan means to give or to donate. So to give to children. And this all began in 2005, 2006. And here I am 18 years later, following the same model, which is very direct, which is I raise money mostly in the US. I find organizations, grassroots organizations that are helping very vulnerable children, children in need, in poverty, orphans with special needs, refugee children, children impacted by conflict, by famine. And we give grants specifically for food, education, and supplies. As I said, it gives me far more joy to do that. And I've maintained a full-time job and work the whole time. So this is what I do sort of on the side. It's my side hustle, but it's really my calling. And it's been incredible. And not just the joy of helping those children in need and knowing the money that I'm raising is going to help them, but actually interacting with volunteers right here in the US who have joined the charity, my board members, my advisory board members, people I meet, when I'm out and about speaking, and that just get inspired by the charity too, and how loving and giving they are, and how immediately generous they are when they hear the story, and they're like, oh, here's $100, here's $300. What can you do with that? So that also gives me joy. So it's been yeah, I never thought of it through this filter, but it's been a lot of touch points of joy in the journey of giving and starting the charity that I never expected. I never ever thought this would be an outcome of that.
Amazing, amazing. Of course, congratulations, first of all, for the great work that you've been doing. Really valuable contribution to the world. So thank you for that.
You.
But tell us about the beginning. Was it easy? Was it hard to get going? You know, once you came back and you had this inspiration, this is what you want to do. You know, practically, did you find it easy or hard to get the charity set up, to get the funds rolling in?
I would say it was a incredible witnessing moment of synchronicity. I had the intention when I came back of I'm going to do something more. I don't know what that is. And things just started falling into place. I happened to be seated next to a lawyer at a very big law firm, Haynes and Boone in Dallas, at a dinner party a few weeks after I got back. And he said, oh, you know, you have to start this thing called a 501c3. Our law firm will help to do that for you. One of my friends knew how to build a website. Someone else at the agency I worked for kindly designed the logo. I mean, it was just things started falling into place above and beyond, I would say, my hard work or anything like that. There was a lot of moments of just synchronicity. And I actually, that quote, you know, follow your bliss, I truly believe in that, because I was just sort of following the signs and saying, well, okay, if this lawyer wants to do this, I better go do this. Or, oh, now I have a website, I better start putting some materials on there. Oh, somebody's invited me to a party, I better start speaking about this charity. And I would say it wasn't strategic. It wasn't thought out. If you had told me then 18 years later I'd be doing this, and 18 years later we would have helped 14,000 children in 14 different countries, I would have said, oh, I don't think so. You know, I don't think that's even possible. But we have, and I really do believe it's because I followed my bliss. And there have been times where, you know, running a thing is hard. You have to do the accounting, and thankfully have an amazing treasurer, Nobby, who helps with that. Like, you have to do things that aren't necessarily fun and are part of service and part of giving your time. And yet at the end of the day, once you've done it and you've accomplished that task that maybe isn't that much fun, you still feel good. And that's what I look for, is like, am I still feeling good doing this? Is it still lighting me up? Am I still following my bliss? And I don't know where I'll be 18 years from now, but I do know that that's a trigger. That's kind of a sign for me of, you know, keep going. This is good.
Yeah. That's a beautiful, beautiful story about the synchronicity when you're actually in that flow where you found something that is a combination of being able to use your talents, but also align with your purpose, what you feel is your mission and what gives you that bliss. Then all these people come in on your path and all of a sudden you're getting help and
Absolutely.
things keep moving. I see that many times. It
It
always
happens.
amazes me every time.
Yeah. It still happens. It still happens. And the universe provides angels along the way and wonderful people along the way. And you just, you know, even with times when I thought, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this, or I'm not raising, you know, the millions that other charities are raising. What am I doing? You know, and then suddenly something, you know, a check will show up, or someone will say, oh, I wanted to give you this money in honor of somebody who might have passed away, who loved children or wanted to do something. And it just keeps me going. And yeah, and here I am.
Because imagine it's not all smooth, plain sailing.
Oh no,
there are moments when things are hard. What are some of the challenges that you think you faced then on this journey that were a bit more difficult to deal with?
You know, I live in the US, and all the children we help are in other countries, and the needs are very great. And I can't clone myself and split myself into many different pieces. And the biggest challenge I face is that I can't be there and I can't be here. There are many things I'd like to do myself. And it's just a question of time and resources, capacity and energy. And that is a constant challenge. I love my career. You know, you start talking about the job that I have. I love my career. I've invested heavily in my career, and, you know, and yet I also have this calling, and I've invested heavily there. And there is never enough time. There is never enough, I would say, capacity. I seem to be able to generate the energy to do both. And I believe for me that comes from a higher place. I really do. I do believe that comes from sort of the spiritual drive that I have and that type of a thing. But I do think for me, the challenge has always been, I want to do more.
So
And
highly driven.
I don't have the time to do more, and
Yeah.
I need the help to do more, you know.
Yeah, I know it's probably hard to answer, but roughly how many hours do you think you would spend on average a month on this charity? Just as a rough guess.
I don't know. I couldn't even answer that because it varies, right?
I know.
There are times where work is really busy, or let's say the holidays where I'm with my family who give me a lot of joy, my little niece and nephew, you know, like where maybe I'm not spending even an hour on the charity. And then there are times where it's high stakes and there's an event coming up. We have an event in New York, you know, in line with the UNGA event. And then it's sort of hours and hours. The whole weekend is packed with preparing for that. It's sitting on the airplane and I'm spending, you know, every minute on the airplane working on a presentation deck. So I would say it's variable. I would say it's not consistent, and it's okay. And I've come to terms with that. I wish I could say, oh, it's always 8 hours every weekend. You know, it's not like, life's just not like that.
Yeah.
And I would say that there's a structure that's been in place that has served me well, that has allowed me to have a career and have this charity. And, you know, it's why we're not the biggest charity in the world. It's why we're volunteer driven. I don't have a huge army of staff to maintain. You know, the way it's constructed also enables a flex of time. And I truly believe like being flexible, adaptable, agile is one of the things you have to develop in life to try to, you know, get through life's ups and downs, because things will change.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good lesson for people to take on, to think that, you know, there are going to be moments when it's going to be quite a lot, and other times you can just sort of turn it down and just sort of run it as a minimum, so that you don't have extra stress, right? Because it's whether you've got a job, a job and a family, and this time is the limiting factor very often. And if we become stressed by it, then it sort of defeats the purpose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it shouldn't be a stressor. I think anyone who decides to volunteer, if it's causing you stress or it's causing you not joy, you know, sort of like you're not having fun, then find something else. And I'm not saying give up volunteering, but maybe the organization isn't right for you, or the cause isn't quite right. What type of time you need, you know, for some people, it's hard for them to physically give up their time. And they come to me and they say, Tanya, we can't go to India. We can't go to Africa. We can't be with you at the orphanage, but we can write you a check. Here you go.
Right.
And they feel just as good, because that is their way of serving. That is their way of volunteering, making the effort to connect, to invest in a cause. It is not all about physical labor. It is not all about being there for hours and hours. I find people get just as much joy, frankly, when they are able to give in whatever form it is, whether it's donation, whether it is their time, whether it's just a word of support or just an emoji, you know, like, or whatever it is on a social media post. You can get those little dopamine hits and those moments of joy from doing many, many different things. I don't want people to take away that they have to suddenly go spend 3 months at an orphanage. It's not about that.
Yeah. No, and I think, you know, as you say, there are many ways to get involved, whether giving time, giving resources, giving money, whether it's something you're doing on your own or joining another charity to get some experience. I think it's a very inspiring story, and I'd love for you to sort of share some maybe more advice to somebody who might be listening to thinking, yes, I'm very inspired by this. Can I do something similar? What type of tips would you have for them to either get them going, or if they're on the journey to get them taking it to the next level?
Yeah, so I have one very big piece of advice, which I wish I had thought through this, you know, 18 years ago, which is I would not likely start my own organization. To be the founder of an organization is a very different journey and path. And what I would also say, and it's part of my model too, is that there are hundreds, if not thousands, of nonprofits out there in the world. They all have boards. They all took the time and the trouble to set them up, to get them registered, to open bank accounts, to get websites. Find one of those that resonates with you and go and volunteer for them for a year. When you volunteered for them for a year, then go sit on their board. And then after you've done that, then if you really do want to start your own, start your own. But doing that first will allow you and enable you to learn about yourself, learn how committed you are, learn how much time you really have and how much energy, more importantly, energy you have, and kind of where you fit. And there are some incredible organizations out there. It's why I didn't start Tanya's school in India or Tanya's, orphanage in Zambia. It's why I found already existing registered, trustworthy grassroots organizations running, doing well with a proven track record, and I invest in them. I raise the money here through my own organization, but I'm leveraging and investing in already existing organizations, because to start your own is very hard. And it's hard no matter if you're in the nonprofit sector or in the for-profit sector. So that's my first piece of advice. The second piece of advice I would have is, really align to what lights you up. Do something that's authentic to you, that you can see yourself always doing. I've always had a heart for children in need, particularly orphans, vulnerable children. It's just something that touches me. But maybe, what really touches you is something a little bit different. Maybe it's around climate, maybe it's around animals, whatever it is, it needs to be authentic to you. And don't spread yourself too thin. I feel that pressure too. There's a lot I want to do in the world. There's a lot of things I wish could be different in the world, with particularly, a lot of different issues right now.
Yeah.
But even for Baal Dan, I have to focus where I focus and know that that's kind of what I can do at this moment.
Yeah, and I think that's fantastic advice. I mean, I like that slow journey option of dipping your toe in and trying it out, and not getting tied up in the whole bureaucracy to begin with of got to get the website, got to get the paperwork done into the IRS, got to do this, got to do that. But to really focus to start with on the core mission by joining some other organization, getting the experience, and then getting on the board. In that way, getting experience of some of the background.
And by the way, I do that too. I did that as a consultant. I did that in my own time as a volunteer. I've used my professional skills in branding, marketing, advertising, tech to go help and volunteer for other nonprofits too, so that my own, I guess, skills can help leverage and scale the work of other nonprofits. I'm taking my own advice and I put that into action too. You don't have to do it by yourself for your own organization.
Excellent. Well, that's really good advice. And I think there's, this sort of journey that you can go on where you're serving others, but if you're doing it in a way where you're using your inherent skills or your learnt skills that you've learned through your career to match those two things, then the magic really starts to happen, right? When you're doing something you're passionate about and something you're great at.
And my board is a great example of that. The people I have surrounding me, I mean, they have amazing superpowers and skills. Not one of them would say, oh, I'm really good at running a nonprofit, but they are excellent with accounting, with finance, with planning, with strategy, with research, So that's where you be true to yourself and see what you can do and help. I would plead with people, please go out and help an existing organization. Please go out there and help somebody who's already done that hard work of setting it up in whatever way you can, whether it's with a donation, sharing something on social media, or saying, hey, how can I help, in a physical way, I guess.
So we're getting towards there, but I've got a couple of quick questions. One is, what's next for Baal Dan? You mentioned a fundraising event in New York. Anything else happening?
Yeah, so I should mention that, almost all the funds Baal Dan raises come through word of mouth and through online. So I'm on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, but we do very few events. With that being said, we have a couple of events this year in New York, in July and in September. And the purpose of these events is actually this year, our focus is to raise money to help children impacted by climate change and as a result of facing malnutrition. So there are famines that are emerging because this is going to be probably another, one of the hottest years on record. There is still a war in Ukraine. Ukraine had been the breadbasket of the world that's been impacting things. There's food inflation. Inflation has just caused food prices to go up everywhere, including right here in America. And so I would say for me, what I am seeing in the next, 2 to 5 years is that there's going to be more of a need for food. There's probably going to be, sadly, more hungry and malnourished children as a result of war, famine, and conflict. And our focus will be to raise money to help get to those children, maybe children who fall through the safety net of some of the big NGOs and programs at the grassroots level. This year, we have a wonderful partner we're working with in Ethiopia. They're really doing work. We're literally saving the lives of hundreds of children by just giving them these nutritional kind of ration kits for 3 months so that they come out of when they've been admitted into hospital for starvation and wasting, that they are able to actually, you know, get food when they go home so they don't slip back underweight. So that's one of our focus areas. I'm very passionate about helping feed children in need. I think food is going to be a huge issue. I think, sadly, it's going to be one of the critical issues that we have to face as a society.
Yeah, I agree with you both with the conflicts as well as the climate impact. Those two things combined. Not going to put your charity out of business in the short term, unfortunately. You're going to have a lot of work to do. So thank you for doing that work. You talked about, what brings you joy in general. If you think back to now, this moment in time, what things are bringing you joy at the moment?
Well, obviously the charity. I think my family, they always bring me joy. I think I have a lot of hobbies, like I have ways I like to spend my time, and my hobbies bring me joy. So I love reading, I love baking and cooking. I love to take walks. I live in Seattle. It's very beautiful here. Walks in the rain, even, so I love to travel. I started with that, and that's kind of full circle for me. I love to travel and see new things, and it doesn't have to be far, whether it's seeing a new little town in the Pacific Northwest, or if I'm getting on a plane and I'm seeing a new village, somewhere in Malawi. It brings me a lot of joy. And, conversations like this, and I'd like to thank you, Andrew, for everything you're doing in the world. You exude a very special spirit and joy. When I met you, I could feel that. And I think conversations like this that are of service, that might just touch the heart of one person, that brings me joy. And like I said, in those moments of synchronicity, you never know who you're going to meet. And I truly live my life that way, in spirit, with love, with hopefully grace, and, with the presence of whatever you call it, a higher energy, God, angels around you. I think it's very important to live with that grace and that knowing that we can make the world a better place, and there are people there that can help us.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Tanya. I mean, we could have another whole conversation around the spiritual side of this, how
For
important
sure.
it is. But I think, when you're talking about your joys, I like the way that there are things that could be bigger things, but there's also you're seeming to find joy in the little things in life, which we find is one of the most important paths to joy. Is not just wait for the big moments for that holiday you've got planned.
No.
Great, but find joy every day, in the cup of
Every
tea,
day.
in the rain, wherever it is. Go jump in those puddles. And
Exactly.
feel some joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I have a little soft toy bunny my mother gave me whose name is Puddles when I moved to Seattle. And, it cracks me up. And, just seeing, you have to generate joy. I think if I can leave people with one thing, is like, you have to generate all these things within yourself, and it's possible to do. And for anyone out there that hasn't maybe had a hard year or hasn't been feeling much joy, I promise you I've been there too. And you can find it again. And you don't have to go and volunteer or get on a plane. You can find it in a wonderful book, or losing yourself in a walk, or, just all those little things too. So stay hopeful and find your bliss.
Absolutely. It's something that we can lose sometimes, but we can certainly cultivate it through these things. So thank you very much, Tanya, for getting up early and spending the time with me today and dealing with the technical issues. It's been a real pleasure and a joy chatting with you. And I hope you, our listeners, have enjoyed this podcast episode as much as I have. And I hope you feel inspired by Tanya to do some volunteering in whatever format that takes. If you've got the energy, go out, do it, even if it's just a little bit, and you'll find great things will come back to you. If you're not already a member of the Year of Joy community, we welcome you to join. You can go to the artandscienceofjoy.com and find out more about how to join. And we'll also post in the show notes where you can find out more about Baal Dan and how to donate to help feed the children and help the children in need, which is super important. So thank you once again for listening. And I hope you tune in for the next episode of the Art and Science of Joy podcast. Until then, stay well, stay joyful, and have a positive impact on the world.